Everybody, and welcome inside the broadcast booth. Paul Severino, Joe McGrain, and Jim Callis from MLBpipeline.com. Today, for the players, it's about taking home a title. But over the last month and a half, it's also been about the process of development. These guys know 60% of those who have played in the fall league make it to the major leagues. And Joe McGrain, they don't just get there, they make an impact.
Well, they certainly do. And we are really looking into the future because not only are they making to the major leagues, we're talking about guys that really make an impact from a standpoint of going back earlier this week. And the hardware was given out early with Aaron Judge winning the Rookie of the Year and Cody Bellinger, who hit a home run last year in the Fall Stars game. Nolan Arenado, 5 Gold Gloves, a Platinum Gold Glove winner this year, and a Cy Young Award for Max Scherzer, and of course Giancarlo Stanton with those mammoth home runs with the Miami Marlins. Paul, we are looking at the best of the best.
We absolutely are, and today we're also looking at the future. All 6 teams represented here in the Arizona Fall League have had its fair share of top-level prospects, but today it's nice because we've got a couple of top prospects in their respective organizations.
We do. We couldn't have scripted this any better. We have the 2 best prospect teams in the whole Arizona Fall League, and we have the 2 best prospects as well in Victor Robles and Ronald Acuna. Robles, the Nationals outfielder, we saw him 2 weeks ago on MLB Network win the MVP award. In the Fall Stars game, he had a base hit. He stole base, he sparked the winning rally. He's also a future potential Gold Glove center fielder, has a strong arm. Really not much he can't do on the field. He was already up in the big leagues this year at age 20. Acuna, we saw him last Saturday, and all he did was hit 2 home runs and make it look very easy. It's an easy swing with explosive bat speed. He has very similar tools to Robles. Maybe not quite the pure hitter, but more impact power. He reminds a lot of guys of Andrew Jones. He's only 19, one of 2 players this year with 20 home runs and 40 steals in the minors. He might be the best prospect in baseball.
And not only is it us 3 up here in the booth, but also Dan O'Dowd joins us for a different perspective, a lot of different positions in his baseball career, including Rockies GM for 15 years. So he'll talk about scouting, development, and the process throughout the game today. But Dan, what else are you looking for?
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, there are a number of things from a GM perspective I'm going to be looking forward to watching today. Number one, there's not many times through the course of the season you get a chance to watch your best players play for a ring. It provides you great insight how competitive they are at this level and how they play for their teammates in trying to win that ring. Number two, I want to find out where they are in relation to their player plan. It gives me some indication how far away they are from the big leagues. But I'm not here to scout their performance. I'm here to scout more about what they do and how they do it, again, at the highest level of competition. Back to you, Paul.
Dan, thanks. We look forward to it. Mesa and Peoria for the 2017 AFL Championship. Lineups and first pitch next.
Network.
Welcome back to Scottsdale, Arizona. It is the Arizona Fall League Championship game presented by I Promise. Paul Severino, Joe McGrain, and Jim Callis up here in the broadcast booth. Let us now take a look at the Mesa Solar Sox starting lineup presented by I Promise. This is a team that finished second in the Arizona Fall League in home runs with 23 and second in the AFL in runs with 158. We talked about Victor Robles at the top of the order in center field, but no slouches. Kyle Tucker, the number 7 overall prospect. According to MLB.com, he hits 6th and plays in right field this afternoon. And on the mound is T.J. Zoik out of the Toronto Blue Jays organization, their number 5 prospect and top pitching prospect in the organization.
Well, this is a guy who really takes advantage of throwing downhill. 6 feet 7 inches, fastball anywhere from 92 to 97, but the fastball really grades a lot higher because it has really good late life to it.
Yeah, I got to see him pitch 3 weeks ago, one of his best starts of the Fall League season. The sinker was really working. He was backing up with the curveball he was using for strikeouts. He'll also mix in a slider and changeup. What impresses me about him, Joe, is for a 6'7" guy, sometimes guys that big have trouble repeating their delivery and throwing strikes, and he doesn't. He keeps the ball down. He uses his size to create angle and plane that makes it really difficult for hitters to make contact.
And the first hitter that he will face is Victor Robles, the number 2 overall prospect according to MLB.com, the number 1 outfield prospect according to MLB.com, and you add all of that up and you get the top prospect in the national system. They play in on the corners, expecting a bunt. Austin Riley, the third baseman, is in. First pitch of the afternoon is ball 1. Robles made his major league debut in September, part of the Division Series roster, and even with Riley in, he shoots one right past him at third. Takes a turn around first, but will stay put with a leadoff single here in the first.
Well, we're talking about the long arm of Zoik and being able to throw the ball downhill. How about the short arms of Victor Robles being able to really get to this boring fastball right in on his hands, and he gets the barrel to it. Hits a rocket right down the third base line. Good bat speed.
Robles on at first for Jacob Brugman out of the A's organization, who takes a called strike.
Robles has good foot speed as well. Alex Jackson, who's back behind the plate after not playing there his first couple of years in pro ball, can be a little shaky back there, so I wouldn't be surprised if we see Robles try to steal.
They check on him, an unconventional slide back, but back nonetheless.
Maybe he's just getting those pants fit right so he doesn't slide into a strawberry at second base. Everyone has the green light here in the Fall League. The only sign that they really put on these guys who can run is the don't go sign based on the situation.
Robles 27 stolen bases at a couple of different levels of the minor leagues this year. Stays put on that one, and this one fouled back by Jacob Brugman, who along with Robles made his major league debut earlier this season in the Oakland A's system. 17th round pick in 2013 out of BYU. See an 0-2 from T.J. Zoik. Zoik, along with his counterpart on the mound today, and Alec Mills, both slated for about 75 pitches. Again, it varies from player to player. Some guys are out here to get more innings. Some guys are out here to test against other top prospects. But at this point in the season, for everybody, it's been a long year. So a lot of red-eye flights back home after this one here this afternoon. This is upstairs, a ball and 2 strikes.
You know, right off the top, we were talking about how developmental this has been for, you know, the best players in the game. The other thing that's good about this for all of these players, because a lot of guys really, their first exposure to playing after September 1 is in the major leagues. And sometimes, you know, they're dead tired when they're trying to put their best foot forward. And this is another reason why this is such an accelerator for a lot of these soon-to-be major league players.
And there's Omar Lopez, completed his first season at High A for the Astros in the Carolina League. Robles is back.
If you want to shock these guys, you tell them that the Fall League used to go a lot longer. They'd come back after Thanksgiving and play for about 3 more weeks. And every time I've told a player that, they've just looked at me like, are you crazy? Like, there would be, 20 more games? And yeah, when the Fall League first started, it was even longer. And these guys can't even fathom playing into December.
I got to believe a couple of guys gathered around the Thanksgiving table don't end up coming back.
I think that's why they actually shortened the schedule, actually, is that was a problem. You'd get like 2/3 of your roster back after Thanksgiving and a little bit of a shorthanded situation.
A 2-2 to Brugman from Zoik with Robles off of first.
Yeah, I don't know why he hasn't gone yet. He had kind of a little delayed steal a couple of pitches ago, but as far as a straight steal, he's got a healthy lead, and Zoik definitely thinks he's going. He does have that repeatable delivery, but at 6 feet 7 inches, it's hard for him to be quick to the plate.
Robles stumbled at taking his lead, but we'll see if he still decides to turn and go to third. He does on the base hit by Brugman. Robles on his secondary lead. I don't know if he got his spike caught or what, but he kind of looked down and with that line drive into left center field, still able to get to third.
Yeah, still did a pretty nice job cutting the bases around second. A little humpback liner into left center field, and you saw it. Look at this, just makes a real nice turn and puts in the afterburners, making it into third easily. He has another gear.
And now Sheldon Noisy off the end of the bat, foul.
Well, this is the guy you want up in this situation. He led the Arizona Fall League with 23 RBIs, also with 7 doubles and 12 extra base hits. They got him from the Nationals in the Sean Doolittle Ryan Madsen trade this summer. I really like him as a prospect. He's played a lot of shortstop. I think he fits better at third where he's playing today. Got a chance to hit for power, pretty good approach at the plate.
Number 14 prospect in the A's system, according to MLBpipeline.com.
And what I like about him is he doesn't try to do too much. He has power, but he doesn't sell out for it. It seems like I said in every broadcast, there's always a guy. But the guys who can hit for power without having to try to do it, those guys usually do pretty well. And he also has very good instincts. Not the fastest guy in the world, but his instincts help him get by it short and make him a good defender at third.
Line towards center field. That will get down in front of Jonathan Davis. And in comes Robles on the RBI single by Sheldon Noisy. It's 1-0 Mesa.
Well, before I could get it out, Jim, I was going to say the guys that don't sell out for power are the ones that really think about the middle of the field to where they get plate coverage and they're able to cover the outside part of the plate. That's exactly where the pitch was. His slider right on the outer third of the plate. And because he was staying through the ball, able to drive in a run, hitting it right up the middle.
And already a meeting on the mound as Yoel Monzon goes out, finishing his second season in the Seattle organization to try to settle down Zoik. And again, we'll talk about it throughout the game here, but there's a pace of play initiative with pitch clocks varying whether there's runners on base or not. Again, we'll get into that. But we've seen a very deliberate first inning here from TJ Zoik.
Well, and that happens as a starting pitcher. You want to pitch out of the windup. You want to develop rhythm, get a feel for the mound, get a feel for the release point. The most unnerving thing for a starter is to be pitching from the stretch right out of the gate. It's like you never get a chance to really feel settled to get your fastball command. And yet Robles getting on, who can run as well as anybody in the fall league.
Hey, Joe, and you can see Zoik right now. This is you talked about a little bit of a longer arm action. This is what fatigue this late in the season does. He is really struggling with his balance over the rubber. His ball's really flat and a little bit up in the zone. Guys are seeing it very well. And that's the fatigue issues that you guys commented on early in the broadcast.
Yeah, Dan, I was seeing the same thing. It's like the arm speed isn't quite there.
It's not.
Fly ball to center. Davis underneath it. Tagging from third is Brugman. Here comes the throw, and here comes Brugman. No throw home. 2-0 Mesa on the sacrifice fly.
Well, Mesa better get as many as they can get. We've talked about in the last couple of games we've done here about what an explosive offense when Peoria comes to the plate. They can score a lot of runs, so really needing Mesa to maximize this inning.
Chop to short. One. Double play. Close at first, but a huge double play turned Urias to Gurriel to Chavis, and the damage limited to the 2 runs in this top of the first inning. 6-4-3 to keep it at a 2-0 deficit for Peoria, who bats in the bottom of the first next. Welcome back to Scottsdale Stadium. A 2-0 lead for Mesa as we go to the bottom of the first inning. A 2-0 deficit, really nothing for this Peoria Javelinas team. First in the AFL this year with a .281 average. First in home runs with 35. First in runs scored with 178. So this could be a long afternoon. I don't think 2-0 really signifies that this game is over. Alec Mills will try to limit this squad. 3 levels of the minor leagues in 2017. His first pitch to Jonathan Davis is in there for a called strike.
Got a couple of big boys throwing from the right side, 6'7", and Alec Mills at 6'4", has to be around the plate, and he normally does pound the strike zone, not particularly overpowering, but if he keeps locating like that, he should be in pretty good shape.
Yeah, and that's what he does. He's not going to blow the ball by you. He'll sit around 91, 93. His changeup is his best pitch if you're grading him out. Throws both the curveball and the slider. Neither is anything particularly special. But just good feel for pitch. I actually think this is a good matchup. This is the type of guy that if you're Mesa, you want on the mound. Because if you're just a guy who's going to throw 95 and try to blow it by these guys, Peoria is going to pound you. This guy can pitch.
And he notches his first strikeout as he gets Davis swinging.
And again, I mean, we're talking about the velocity. You know, the velocity is not how you would judge either of these pitchers on their fastballs. It's really the sink more than the velocity. It's good, not great velo. And I think we're going to see a lot of the changeup today. You know, the thing is, though, he can be around the strike zone too much. So if he's not precise, especially with this lineup, he can get hit.
You know, that's a great point. And I think when you really take off as a pitcher at the major league level is when you can throw strikes whenever you want to, and you pitch outside the strike zone with purpose to really draw the hitter out. And the guys that are continually throwing strikes in the zone, the guys are taking comfortable hacks like this, you have to be able to pitch around the periphery of the strike zone with purpose, and I think that will be part of his development going forward.
Chavis is a guy who takes a lot of comfortable hacks. Number 92 overall prospect, according to MLBpipeline.com. He's also the number 2 prospect in the Red Sox system and number 5 when it comes to third base prospects, playing some first base here in the Arizona Fall League because of all that Rafael Devers had done in his first go-around in the major leagues.
Looked like he tried to backdoor the changeup there and just missed. We saw the breaking ball right before that, which was more he was trying to get him to chase, but it really wasn't close enough to tempt Chavis to go after it.
But you're right, Jim. This is going to be a real good challenge for Mills because this is the loaded lineup, clearly the best offensive lineup in the fall league. So he's going to have to mix it up and execute not only in the strike zone, but as I was saying, out of it.
2-2 to Chavis is driven long down the left field line. If it stays fair, it is long gone, but it is foul. Lost that one in a beautiful blue sky, cloudless blue sky. But that one was drilled. Dan O'Dowd, obviously there's a lot of different reasons for sending players out to the Arizona Fall League. A situation like Chavis, learning a new position. What are you trying to see in 6 weeks, especially since guys necessarily aren't even playing every single day?
Just their progress, Paulie, and their development plan, how they handle the day in and day out grind. You're not looking for perfect. You're just looking for progress as much as you can. Right there, he had a good two-strike approach in that entire at-bat. Missed the first pitch that he just missed that he swung at. Very good-looking kid. So, again, in his case, you're trying to look for versatility. But in every player that's here, there's a player plan, a physical, fundamental, and mental plan that you adhere to with each player. And you want to see how much progress they're making within these 6 weeks that they're here.
Well, he is on at first as we await the scoring. Right now it's listed as a single, but that's all bookkeeping. Here is Austin Riley with a runner off of first, and that one misses. A ball and no strikes. Riley, part of a loaded Braves farm system that is very well represented here in the Arizona Fall League. We haven't even, we talked about it in the open, but we haven't seen Ronald Acuna yet. Perhaps one of the most talented players out here in the Arizona Fall League. Mills deals, he's swinging a miss. And Riley even up a ball and a strike.
You see Riley getting a little tied up by that boring fastball. What we've seen out of Riley is he has good power down in the strike zone, but the fastball up is kind of giving him a little trouble and tied him up a little bit, like that one again there.
Riley, the number 10 prospect in the Braves system, according to MLBpipeline.com.
You see, trying to neutralize power hitters' nitro zone by going in on the hands, and obviously he having to make an adjustment. Got a little tied up.
Chavis away from first. That one misses down and away. 2 balls and 2 strikes. Riley, one of 7 first-round picks on the Peoria roster. 41st overall in the 2015 draft. And a 2-2 pitch. Swing and a miss. Second strikeout of the inning for Alec Mills. 2 away.
It's a beautiful job of changing speeds, tying him up with a couple of fastballs to where he has to get the head out, and then all of a sudden you pull the string and he's way out in front. Just a beautiful job of adding and subtracting inside of an at-bat.
And now with the runner on and 2 outs, that'll bring up Eric Falia, who has put together really a heck of an AFL season out here.
I really think he's helped himself as much as any prospect out here, guys. I mean, he led the league in hitting at .408, had the highest ops, highest on-base percentage. This is a guy who really put himself on the map. I remember watching him at UCLA in 2013. He was their best hitter in the postseason as UCLA won the College World Series. He missed 2014 with a shoulder injury. He missed 2015. He got caught plagiarizing a paper. Missed whole year. Came back, was a 20th round pick, almost 24 when he entered pro ball last year. But he's hit everywhere he's been, including out here in Arizona.
Yeah, plagiarizing a paper, that'll get you every time, Jim.
Are you suggesting that I might have done that, Joe? Or
no, it was just a public service announcement.
Thank you, Joe.
Carry on.
I actually talked to him a little bit about it, and he said he learned from the mistake, and it taught him to appreciate the game, and something obviously he realized he shouldn't do. And he's a father, newborn twin, so he's got lessons to pass on now.
Floated out toward left center field. A long run for Robles, but he tracks it down in the gap. We are through 1 in Scottsdale. Mesa with a 2-0 lead.
Network.
Bryce Harper digs it. Swinging at the first pitch, and he has got a base knock to left.
And that ball is gone. Nolan Arenado with a solo home run. Swing and a miss. Strikeout number 4 for Eduardo Rodriguez.
Deep to right and gone.
He is just killing it. 4 for 4.
Half toward right field, and that is his second home run of the afternoon. Just a small taste of some of the names that have passed through the Arizona Fall League as it concludes its 26th season here today in Scottsdale. Zoik's first pitch to Kyle Tucker is fouled off. Paul Severino, Joe McGrain, Jim Callis of MLBPipeline.com up here in the broadcast booth. Dan O'Dowd a little closer to the field, providing a different perspective through a GM's prism throughout the afternoon as Kyle Tucker will see an 0-1 pitch and look at it, ball 1. He's the number 7 overall prospect according to MLBPipeline.com and the top prospect in an Astros system that is certainly, I don't think I'm breaking any news here, but set up for a lengthy window of winning, still just a few weeks removed from a World Series championship.
Well, oftentimes you'll see a different swing out of Kyle Tucker, but he definitely knows where the barrel of the bat is, and he is working on just trying to get that swing together in one piece, one collective piece, like that.
That worked, a line drive, base hit, and Tucker is aboard. Already the 4th hit for the Mesa Solar Sox.
Hey, Danny, we saw the video of Nolan Arenado, and obviously one of our favorite players, 5-time Gold Glove winner. And when you were the GM with the Rockies, you kind of had to have a little talking to when he was starting his career?
No, a little bit deeper into his career, Joe. Hey, listen, every player at some point in time in their development process, as you know, it's hard staying in the big leagues, even harder getting to the big leagues. There's a lot of frustration along the way. So it was just a conversation, you know, reminding him that how good he can possibly be, which was, we believed in his potential tremendously, but he's going to have to learn to control his frustrations a little bit better and stay focused, really define focus day in and day out. Honestly, Joe, I had a lot of those kind of conversations over the years. As a GM, it's not so much about being liked as being direct.
So he would maybe have a frustrated at-bat and take it out to the field with him, that kind of thing, or just getting his routine together as a professional? And
yeah, it was more, Joe, just, you know, not controlling his emotions to the point of getting in the way of his ability and letting the failure of the game interrupt what had a chance to be just a tremendous career. And, you know, credit to Nolan. I don't think he necessarily was crazy about the conversation, but he did something about it, which at the end of the day is, you know, is what you're looking for.
Kelvin Gurrier is unable to check his swing. He's retired for out number 1 here in the 2nd. So that will bring up Charcer Burks, the left fielder, number 8 hitter. Dan, it's interesting because with the Arizona Fall League, for those who may not know, each organization sends 7 prospects to the AFL.
Right.
Sometimes, this one is chopped just wide of third, sometimes it's a top-level prospect, a guy who you know is going to be a stud, a Trout, a Harper, an Arenado.
Sure.
Sometimes it's a guy maybe further down that list. What goes into the thought process as a GM in terms of, okay, it's time to pick and choose who's going to go to the AFL?
Again, Paul, I get back to those player plans because for me they were the core of our development process. You get together with your director of player development and you begin to discuss really in July the players that you earmark in a perfect situation to come here. Now there is a draft, so though you may prioritize certain positions that you want, earmarking those players to go, you got to be able to draft those positions. So at times you don't get a perfect lot, so to speak, on the players you do want to send here, but you try to look at exactly who would get the most out of this opportunity to take their development program to the next level.
Burks flies out for the second out here in the 2nd inning. That'll bring up Sean Murphy, representing the Oakland A's organization, their number 11 prospect and number 10 catching prospect overall.
Hey, Dan, getting back to what you were saying, too, you also have to, I guess, be careful who you send here, too, for purposes of the Rule 5 draft, don't you? Because I know there are cases where a player sometimes comes here and gets exposure.
You know, Jimmy, I never did that.
Okay.
I felt like, that would not be in the best interest of the individual player. If a player performed to the point where we had to add him to the roster at someone else's expense, that was a good decision we had to make. Very rarely are kids kept anymore in the Rule 5 draft, as you know. Some organizations do. A lot of those players get returned. But if you miss an opportunity to develop a player at this league, at this level, to the next stage of his career, then you may never get that opportunity again. So I never overthought that to that point.
Okay, good point. I was going to say, I know, talking to Mike Rizzo, I think he's still hot from when he was with the Diamondbacks. He believed in Dan Uggla, and they sent him out here and then didn't protect him on the 40-man roster. And Marlins picked him up and made him their starting second baseman the next year.
Well, I don't think in those cases, buddy, you probably needed the Arizona Fall League to determine whether you should put him on the roster or not. If you're waiting to make that decision based on how they perform here, then you probably haven't done a real good job evaluating that player over the 6 months that you had.
Line drive, center field, falling fast and down for a base hit. Sean Murphy with a 2-out knock.
And Joe, again, this young man's pitches up in the zone, his arm really dragging behind him. I would be surprised if he stays in the game that much longer. He simply is out of gas at this point in time. He's not using anything with his legs whatsoever.
Yeah, and when you're 6'7", we talked about his ability to repeat his delivery, and when you're seeing it come apart, at this stage, and when that arm is late, that's what we were talking about, the arm speed and not having that quickness to where he can, feel and reel are two different things, but have that sensation that his arm is out front and that he is releasing it right off his fingertips out in front.
And taller guys, it takes a little bit of a longer development time, and I've always looked at that. When I've had guys that I looked at 6'4" and above, in my mind, they would be a longer development process for them, because to get them to feel and stay within their delivery on a consistent basis usually took a little bit longer. Hey, just a quick point, guys, and then I'll be quiet here. Jumping out at this kid, Robles, boy, immediate player comparison for me was Andrew McCutchen. Just jumped off the map on me. Very, very similar to me.
Agree?
Yeah, I'll buy that. I think that's a very good one. And just watching him today, I mean, anybody who's watching this game on TV, you can tell how fast he is. I mean, the way he went to get the ball to end the last inning, the way he got around the bases in the top of the first. I mean, his quickness is you can see how it can change the game.
Soft line drive, right center field, and a diving catch by Eric Falia. Well, he has put together a great offensive AFL and a nice defensive gem to add to the docket as well. Terrific play. Zoik loves it. Out number 3 here in Scottsdale.
MLB Network.
I talked with Andy Haynes today, the manager of the Salt River team, the East Division squad as well, and I said, was I on to anything that he kind of sets up a little bit like Giancarlo Stanton? And he said, yes, I said that yesterday. So I asked Aaron Judge, I said, do you model yourself after him at all? And he said no, because there were some comps to also just his mannerisms, the way that he carries himself. And he said maybe that's just how giant guys set up. Well, I fully admit I do not have a scout's eye. I don't even pretend to play one on TV, but the resemblance certainly striking, and we had heard it all year in 2017, the comparisons between Giancarlo Stanton and Aaron Judge, both taking home hardware this week. A Rookie of the Year for Judge and NL MVP for Stanton. And who knows if an NL MVP and a Rookie of the Year are in the future of Ronald Acuna, who leads things off here. 5, 6, and 7 due up in the bottom of the second inning for the Peoria Javelinas, who trail 2-0. The number 5 overall prospect according to MLB.com, but Jim, of course, those rankings will change in the next few weeks when everything reshuffles and the prospect rankings, well, guys graduate. So he certainly move up from number 5.
Right. We're going to have our new list. Our new top 100 will be out in January, and we'll probably have another MLB Network special. And I would suspect that he'll either be number 1 or number 2 on that list. I caused some consternation in Braves Nation last week when we talked about this, and I said I'm still wrestling with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. versus Ronald Acuna, because while Guerrero Jr. isn't the all-around player, the bat, I think, might even be better than Acuna's.
Line drive right to Sheldon Noisy over there at third for out number 1.
It seems like every at-bat that we've seen in these 3 games that we've televised, he has hit the ball on the button. Even his outs are hit hard.
One away for Josh Naylor, representing the Padres organization. The DH this afternoon takes ball 1. He's the number 10 prospect in that system, according to MLBpipeline.com. 12th overall pick in 2015. We'll see a 1-0 pitch from Alec Mills. 1-1.
He's all about power. I mean, that's why he went so high in the draft when the Marlins drafted him before they traded him to the Padres and Andrew Cashner deal. I think the question is going to be what else can he bring to the table? And for a guy who's got prodigious raw power, only 10 home runs this year in the minor leagues, which kind of surprised me. That's going to have to be his carrying tool. The raw power's in there. He's not going to give you much in the way of running or defense, so he's going to have to hit for more power than he did this year. But it's in there.
Boy, he's got his hands almost down around the belt line level. Obviously brings him up a little bit to kind of get into that launch position, but it's hard to think of many hitters that really start from that position that low.
It's one of those things I would imagine with a pitcher too, when it boils down to if it ain't broke, don't fix it sort of thing. Kind of like the Kyle Tucker hitch that you were talking about before. Just lays the bat out there and serves a single into center field. Naylor was aboard with 1 out here in the second.
Well, the old adage that scouts used to talk about, if you can't hit, it's called a hitch, and if you can, it's called a timing mechanism. Naylor just reaching out and touching that one.
Looked like he was actually cut out in front on the changeup a little bit there, but must be living right because he dropped into center field for a hit.
Yeah, a little wedge shot into center field.
And now Alex Jackson, swing and a miss. First round pick, number 6 overall in 2014. Dealt to the Braves in November of 2016 for Rob Whalen and Max Povsey, who is also on the Peoria squad out here in the Arizona Fall League. The 0-1. So we've talked about Riley, we've talked about Acuna. Now Alex Jackson at the dish. Kind of a 30,000-foot view of the Atlanta Braves and their farm system and how they rank compared to the other 29 teams, Jim.
It is. Well, I think they have the best farm system in baseball right now, so I'll make Braves fans happy with that, even if I won't fully commit to ranking Ronald Acuna number 1 over Vlad Guerrero Jr. Yeah, Jackson's had a really interesting career. He was seen as a can't-miss hitter when he was number 6 pick out of the draft, and he really didn't hit for 2 or 3 years.
He hits right there, a line drive into right field. Naylor around second toward third, and Peoria is set up with runners on the corners and 1 out in the second.
And just to finish that thought, after the Braves traded for him and they put him back behind the plate, Seattle was not going to use him as a catcher to try to get his back quickly to the big leagues. The catching's still very much a work in progress, but he showed more offensive potential this year, started to realize more of it this year. 19 home runs, and looking more like the hitter the Mariners thought they were originally drafting and then the Braves were trying to salvage.
Danny, why do you think that, we talk about it every year, that catching is down in the major leagues defensively, whether it be offensively? Why is that?
Well, Joe, it's a position of attrition. Number 1, number 2, I think we have a tendency to rush catchers to the big leagues. I call it an accumulation position. You've got to catch a lot to become proficient at doing it. Guys that are catchers that swing the bat have a tendency to really be behind in their defensive skills simply because they've been able to get to the levels they've got to based on their bat. And so I think it's a combination of other things. I'm a big believer that it's a position that you do have to have tremendous athleticism to play, to be good at. And we have a tendency in this industry to take non-athletes and try to make them catchers, when to me it's one of the most athletic positions to play within the game.
And with baseball taking more of an analytical view as well, don't you think that there really isn't an excuse for a guy to just work strictly on his hitting, that he has to become a two-way player at that position?
Without a doubt. I do think that's one part where analytics is going to help, because it's going to really earmark those catchers that have the ability to do that part of the job exceptionally well.
A sac fly for Arias and a long fly ball for Gurriel. It's now 2-1 through 2 here in Scottsdale.
Share what's inside.
Welcome back to Scottsdale, the 2017 Arizona Fall League Championship game presented by I Promise. Of course, throughout this game, talking a lot about farm systems and prospects, and one of the teams represented here is the Atlanta Braves, who, of course, have been in the news recently for violating rules in the international market. Commissioner Rob Manfred has yet to announce the exact penalties, but our MLB Network insider Ken Rosenthal reported a couple of days ago that those sanctions will almost certainly include the loss of prospects that were signed out of Latin America. And it's only speculation at this point, but there is potential for them to lose Kevin Maitan, a 17-year-old who's the number 5 prospect in their system. A fly ball off the bat of Jacob Brugman for out number 1 here in the third. Sheldon Noisy and Cody Eves to follow here in the third for Mesa, but Jim Callis, a 17-year-old in Maitan, and again, we don't know for sure, but if that's the case, what kind of player is Maitan?
That would be a huge loss. I mean, he was considered the gem of the 2016 international crop, signed for $4.25 million, which is a record. Coming out of Venezuela, he gets compared to guys like Miguel Cabrera, Chipper Jones, because he's a switch hitter who might wind up at third base for the Braves, Miguel Sano, a couple other guys who've been rumored to possibly being players who could be declared free agents. Dominican middle infielder named Junior Severino, one of your relatives, I guess.
Perhaps.
So they're ground out there, signed for $1.9 million, and Juan Contreras, a pitcher, signed for $1.2 million. So not only would you lose 3 talented guys, including Maitan, who would spark a bidding frenzy, but you're losing $7.5 million worth of bonus. Plus $7.5 million worth of penalty taxes, so you've essentially flushed $15 million away if you lose those 3 guys.
And Dan O'Dowd as a GM, a new GM, I guess. And Alex Anthopoulos, probably not the necessarily the mess you'd like to clean up.
Yeah, there's a long-term play here, Paul, is the fact that, sure, as Jim talked about, there's an immediate effect on the organization. But it takes years to put together an infrastructure in Latin America and be good at it. As the attrition factor of this, and you lose personnel and start all over again, it could be years before you rebuild it. You go through years without adding talent, it leaves gigantic holes within your system.
Well, a heck of a play there by Lourdes Gurriel at second base. A 1-2-3 inning for Zoik. We go to the bottom of the third here in Scottsdale, 2-1. MLB Network special coverage of the 2017 Arizona Fall League Championship game is presented by I Promise. Live in focus. Welcome back to Scottsdale Stadium, and it's a 2-1 lead for the Mesa Solar Sox in this championship game. We welcome you inside our broadcast booth. Paul Severino, Joe McGrain, and Dr. Graham Erickson, professor of optometry at Pacific University. Dr. Graham Erickson, thanks so much for taking the time.
It's great to be here. Beautiful day for some baseball.
Oh, absolutely. We got lucky with the weather, no doubt about that. Top of the order duo here for the Peoria Javelinas against Alec Mills, Jonathan Davis, Michael Chavis, and Austin Riley. The 1-0 pitch is tapped foul. All right, so give us a little bit about your background and how long you've been working with athletes.
I started in the early 90s with some college baseball, Cal State Fullerton, and they kind of understood there's a connection between how well you see and how well you play. So that was my job, make sure that vision wasn't the reason the guys weren't performing at their potential.
Did you play sports growing up?
I did, but not baseball, more tennis and basketball.
But hand-eye coordination, I sense a theme there, no doubt about that.
There is a common element, and certainly, vision's a reason why sometimes, kids kind of can't compete anymore. Sometimes it's physical, sometimes it's the vision.
2-2 pitch to Davis, misses inside. I've heard it from pitchers who love the fact that hitters can't see fastballs, that it's so hard to do. I've heard it from hitters and just how difficult it is. So the importance of being able to see, as Davis is hit by a pitch, that's paramount in this game.
Right. It's one of those sports that really it's designed to be right at the edge of the human possibility of how fast can you see something and react to it. And you move that pitcher a little closer, and we're not calling much in a game. You move them a little further away, and the game has changed now.
What kind of improvements have you seen? Obviously, one of the best things that a hitter can have is a gift. We talk about the hand-eye coordination, but pitch recognition on a bright, sunny day with that white baseball coming in there, being able to recognize the spin to differentiate between fastball, curve, slider, changeup.
Right, that's a visual signal that you have 100 milliseconds, so a tenth of a second. Your visual system has to process that information, in addition to the height of the ball, the speed of the pitch, and then start your swing mechanics, and that doesn't give a person a lot of time.
An 0-1 on its way to Michael Chavis, is low and away, a ball and a strike with Jonathan Davis off of first base. So are there certain drills that you can use to help pick up a baseball, to train your eyes just as much as you train your arms and your legs?
Absolutely. Vision is, we kind of take it for granted that we see as well as we see, and there isn't much we can do other than go out there and play more. But certainly there are training activities. They're using the proper correction, and filters even sometimes can help on a day when lighting is not very good. Those are all things that, in addition to our nutrition, we can do to help see the best we can.
You mentioned nutrition. Forgive me for being so stupid, but just eat some carrots, no?
Right. That's what your mama would have told you.
Yeah.
Is, eat more carrots. But carrots are really your night vision, and night vision's not going to help you much in a day game. And we've learned a lot more about nutrition due to the studies that have been done with the aging eye, and what can we do to preserve.
Chavis flies this one out toward right field. Tucker toward the line is there, shielding his eyes. Is he wearing sunglasses? Doc, what are you doing here?
Sometimes you do it with a disadvantage. But certainly, I think there was an emphasis on preserving, and in those same kind of conversations, we talked about, well, if those nutrients are going to preserve your vision, what does it do for a young, healthy player? And lots of really good research now shows that the better you take in certain nutrients, the better you see. Not just how clearly you see, but judging contrast.
And what would be a couple of those nutrients when we're talking about a hitter in the prime of his visual years?
Well, the name of the nutrient is zeaxanthin, and it's found in bright colored fruits, vegetables. It occurs naturally. So you have to have a pretty diverse, healthy diet, and that way you maximize the intake of that nutrient.
An 0-1 from Alec Mills on the way to Austin Riley. Runner goes, throw to second is off the glove of Eves, trickles into right field, but Davis will stay put at second base with a stolen base.
Sean Murphy tried to make one of those Benito Santiago type throws from his knees, with Davis getting a good jump and too quick of a tag by Eves, knowing that he had to hurry. Brings the glove down too quickly. Got to catch it first. You have to see it first, right, Doc?
That's right. See, then react.
So Davis in scoring position for Austin Riley now. 1 on and 1 out, and a 1-1 pitch coming from Alec Mills. Blocked nicely by Murphy to keep Davis at second base. 2 balls and a strike. So again, we making light of the fact that that Tucker was not wearing sunglasses, but it's more than just coming off the rack at some sunglass shop and just taking whatever, right? There's different colors that I've seen players wear. Is there a purpose to that?
Yeah, colors filter light differently, and the way I look at filters is you want the important detail to stand out. So for baseball, it's that red seam, because the red seam tells you about the spin on that ball. So I want a filter that's going to make that red pop. And that way, visually, it's easier to see what you need to see.
Now, I was, I'll be honest with you guys, we go back a few years now. Never a great baseball player growing up, but I played through high school. But when I played youth baseball, man, I had the wristbands and the gloves and the sunglasses, the eye black and everything else. Is eye black a myth?
Yeah, well, yeah.
Really?
I mean, this is something I did research with because I was curious to see what it does to, vision and contrast and glare, and it pretty much did nothing. And it looks good.
The placebo effect.
Right. Yeah. It looks good. You feel good. I'm not telling you not to put it on, but if you're expecting that to cut the contrast for you, it really doesn't do much.
Well, this is a guy right here in Eric Falia who won the I Promise Visual Edge Award earlier in this game. So I think suffice it to say, Joe, he was seeing the ball pretty well out here in the Arizona Fall League.
Yes, and the good doctor just debunked one of the coolest things that baseball players for forever, the eye black, to make him look like a real baller out there.
That's right. Yeah. Well, there are a lot of things you can do. Eye black is probably not going to change your performance much.
But I still think it looks cool. Heck, I'd wear it now if we didn't have to be on camera so much. It just looks great. So Falia bats with Davis on at second base. And another thing that we have certainly talked about and heard about in scouting. So much time we look at players' bodies and how he's built and he's long and he's lean and this and that or whatever. But sometimes scouts, Joe, and I've heard you say this, will also look at a guy's eyes, whether or not they're blue or not.
Yeah, the old scouting bromide is like they would think twice about drafting a guy who has really light blue eyes about playing during the day.
Right, and there's certainly been players that have said they struggle more in day games than night games, and relate that to eye color. And certainly eye color plays a role, but it's a relatively small role. So, and again, there are things you can do to modify that, and even the nutrient that we were talking about, zeaxanthin, that is responsible for that pigment inside of the eye that helps filter light, more so than the blue color of the iris.
And now Ronald Acuna with runners on first and second after the walk. A chance to put Peoria back on top, if nothing else, at least tie the game with a runner on in scoring position here. Paul Severino, Joe McGrain, and Dr. Graham Erickson with you up here in the broadcast booth. 2-1 in the 2017 Arizona Fall League Championship game. Here in the bottom of the third, Alec Mills delivers a breaking ball to Acuna in there for a called strike. In terms of the laser eye surgery, do players do it, I don't want to say preventatively, but prematurely, just to improve what might be good vision to make it great? Is that ever
Well, I think that
is
the perception, is that it will help you see better. The reality is, at best, you will see the same, and it's likely you might not see as well, especially judging contrast is something that it's getting better with laser refractive surgery, but it's still an area that you're going to not see as well post-surgically. And I think that's a misperception. Is that it will make your vision better. What it does is makes it so you don't have to wear your contact lenses or your glasses.
Well, that was the reason I had that done. In fact, I wish I would have had it would have been at that point in my career where I was able to do that with all the blowing cinders and gunk behind your contacts trying to see.
Line drive, base hit by Acuna. Davis around third. Here comes the throw, not in time. We are tied at 2. An RBI single for Acuna. He moves to second on the throw.
Now Acuna getting that off the end of the bat. You see that swing with a lot of lift. And the play for Robles is right in front of him at third base. You see the read there. He had the easy out at third base. May have been able to get him at third before the runner crossed home plate.
All right, Omar Lopez comes out to replace Alec Mills as he goes to the bullpen. We step aside and say thank you very much, Dr. Erickson. Always a pleasure to talk with you.
All right, thanks for having me, gentlemen.
All right, pitching change here in Scottsdale, tied at 2 in the third.
Network.
Tomorrow night, these are the plays of finesse, of sacrifice, of sheer force of will. The Capital One Premier Plays of the Year, Sunday night, 9 Eastern on MLB Network. Paul Severino, Joe McGrain, Jim Callis of MLBpipeline.com. Dan O'Dowd with us as well, a little closer to the field. Different perspective today for this Fall League Championship game. Jake Stinnett takes over. 14 appearances as a reliever in 2017. Pitched to a 1.19 ERA. Faced Josh Naylor here. And misses outside. 2 runners in scoring position. The runner on at third is Eric Falia. Ronald Acuna had the RBI single. Is the runner at second. We are tied at 2 here in the bottom of the third. And again, it was the first inning. 2 runs came across for Mesa, but you knew that Peoria would put together a rally at some point in this game. They're just too high-powered not to. So Josh Naylor, who singled and scored back in the second.
Get ready, kid. Get ready, Jackson. Let's go.
And they are intentionally walking him to load the bases. Hence the pause and confusion there. But Naylor works the walk, quote unquote. So the base is now loaded with 2 outs. So that'll bring up Alex Jackson, who singled in the second inning.
You talked about it earlier that this lineup just keeps coming after you. #1 in the Fall League in average home runs, runs scored.
And Jackson laces one to left field, a base hit. Falia scores, Acuna right behind him, and it's 4-2 Peoria.
I don't remember, Paul, if it was a couple of weeks ago or last week in talking with Peoria's manager, former major leaguer Luis Salazar. He said, he just very unabashedly said, you know, we have to cover the pitching, but we just score 8-9 runs every night. And they're up to a pretty good start here early.
Well, it seems like that's what we saw last Saturday. They jumped to a 6-0 lead, blew it, fell behind 7-6. Oh, okay, we'll score 4 runs in the last couple innings and pull this one out.
And now Luis Urias takes a look at ball one. Had a sac fly in the second inning. Urias, the number 48 overall prospect, according to MLBpipeline.com, and number 3 in the Padres system.
We've seen him hit 9th. We've seen him hit 8th. He's a better hitter than that, isn't he, Jim?
I think almost everybody in this lineup is. I mean, Urias is probably the best pure hitter in the minor leagues. Just a tremendous feel for the barrel and the strike zone.
Sends it out towards center. Pretty routine play for Robles. But 3 runs come across in the bottom of the third as the Peoria Javelinas have taken a 4-2 lead in Scottsdale.
Tops.com.
Premiering tonight, an over-the-hill ball player strikes an unlikely bond with a 17-year-old phenom in Pastime. Tonight, 9 Eastern on MLB Network's Bleacher Features. Paul Severino, Joe McGrain, Jim Callis of MLBPipeline.com up here in the broadcast booth. Dan O'Dowd a little closer to the field, providing a different perspective this afternoon, that from a GM's point of view. TJ Zoik deals low to AJ Simcox. 5, 6, and 7 due up for Mesa. The team that now finds themselves down 4-2 as we move to the top of the 4th inning. A strike. After Simcox, it's Kyle Tucker and Kelvin Gutierrez.
Excuse me, Paul. Dan and I were talking. We didn't think that Zoik was going to be around, but his team and a prodigious lineup, just trying to manage the ball game and stay out of the big innings. And other than the first, he's been able to do that. So he's stricken them pretty well.
I think the key play really for him was Eric Falia making that diving catch to end the second, or that could have been some more runs. And
yep.
You know, we've seen this Peoria team. We saw on Saturday. They've got some pretty good arms in the bullpen, too. So if you don't get to them early and they start dropping Andres Munoz and Art Warren on you, they can shorten this game up. It's kind of like a postseason game. You need to get to them early because they might shorten the game to 6 or 7 innings on you.
First pitch swinging. Kyle Tucker goes off of Zoik. Gurriel has a tough time with it in right field, and Tucker will reach.
We were getting a look as we were talking to the coaches before the game about the great talents of Kyle Tucker. You're not going to see the same swing every time. You see a lot of rotation there, but he's still able to consistently, with those good hands, find the barrel of the bat.
That'll bring up Kelvin Gutierrez, who struck out in the 2nd inning. Tucker off of first with 1 away here in the 4th. Dan, how about the Houston Astros? I jokingly said before, hey, their window of winning is wide open. And from a GM's perspective, that's all well and good, but I would imagine that a GM can't always buy into that hype. It's not like you take the next 3 years off and just watch them win.
No, your scouting development process, Paul, has to continue on a year-round basis. It is open from a positional player standpoint, which is going to allow them to allow kids like Tucker to really be developed appropriately without having to rush them, because they've got that good a core together at the big league level. The issue is going to be with their pitching. You know, the pitching is can they keep what they have healthy at the big league level, and can they continue developing it through the pipeline to augment the kind of money that they're going to have to spend to hold on to those players as they get into their arbitration eligible years. It's amazing how quickly your windows close in this game. That's why you always have to have talent coming through the system.
Aren't they going to have to, for the most part, turn that bullpen over almost every year?
Yeah, not unlike a lot of organizations, though, Joe. And it's because, one, bullpens, as you know, is so unpredictable. So many gray areas as you evaluate your pens. But number two is that there seems to be more power guys within the game and more access to them in a lot of different ways.
Gutierrez with a ground ball towards short. The flip, the turn, and the double play. Another crisp inning for TJ Zoik. A double play erases the 1-out single. It's 4-2 in Scottsdale.
Network.
Ryan McCann with a home run. What a start for Charlie Morton. Swing and a miss. Got him on the curveball. This is just nasty. Swing and a miss. That's 10 for Keuchel. Springer stays hot.
George Springer can start thinking about MVP honors.
And a very late congratulations to the Houston Astros, still celebrating their 2017 World Series championship, first in franchise history. Paul Severino, Joe McGray, Jim Callis of MLBPipeline.com. Dan O'Dowd with us as well as we move to the bottom of the fourth inning. 9-1-2 due up for Peoria, as Lourdes Gurriel takes low for ball one. Jonathan Davis and Michael Chavis will follow. Last half inning, we were talking about the Houston Astros and their wide open window of winning. And coming out of break, we saw a number of their players who have passed through this Arizona Fall League. And as we touched on in the open, George Springer, now 3 straight World Series MVPs that have played in the Arizona Fall League. So, as we say every year, keep an eye on the players that play here. They are going to make an impact at the next level. And usually, we've been blessed that usually it's within a couple of years of them being out here in the Fall League. A 2-1 from Jake Stinnett to Gurriel, misses inside. Stinnett in his second inning of work as he took over for Alec Mills. Mills lasted the first 2 2/3, 4 hits, 4 runs, a walk, and 3 strikeouts. And that is ball 4. Jim Callis, if we're looking into the future, this quote-unquote window of winning for the Houston Astros, we fast forward to 2020. What does their lineup look like?
Well, it's going to look a lot like what we see now. I think Kyle Tucker, they're going to squeeze him in there somewhere, along with Derek Fisher, we've seen out in the Fall League in the past. I think they'll be outfield regulars, but I think the lineup is mostly going to look like what we saw win the World Series. Dan was talking about the key for them is going to be developing pitching. The 2 key guys for them are going to be Forrest Whitley, their first-round pick.
Oh, man.
Oh, that looked a lot worse. Thank goodness he's okay.
He is up quickly, and thank goodness he's right.
It happened so fast it looked like it originally got him right in the face. Squaring to bunt and looked like he got it more in the collarbone. You want to talk about, or in the left pec. You just see that ball right out of the hand, had his name all over it.
So that'll bring up Michael Chavis, 2 on and 1 out, a walk and a hit batter. And again, Peoria in business.
I'll get back and finish that Astros thought. I was going to say the 2 key pitchers for them developmentally are going to be their last 2 first-round picks. Forrest Whitley was drafted out of high school in 2016, finished this year in Double-A. He's the one guy in their system who's got the greatest potential to pitch at the top of a rotation or near the top of a rotation. Then you have this year's first-rounder, J.B. Bukauskas. He's a smaller guy. There's a lot of effort in his delivery. They're going to develop him as a starter for now. I think long-term he might be their closer of the future because when he's on, both the fastball and the slider are well above average pitches. So those are going to be the 2 guys. They have some depth guys, but those are the 2 guys they really need to come through in the next year or so. Probably more ready 2019 than 2018.
But the bottom line is the Houston Astros, Joe, are not going anywhere anytime soon.
Outstanding, as Dan was talking about, just outstanding position players. And you talked about the Astros and all of their analytics. When you just looked at the team that was on the field in the postseason, those guys were really good players.
Right.
They were just good players.
And just to touch on the farm system for one more second, one of the things they did that they were adamant about doing when they were checking in on Chris Sale, when they traded for Justin Verlander and pulled the trigger, they did not want to give up Kyle Tucker or Forrest Whitley, and they were able to go out and get Verlander, who was a difference maker, without giving up the cream of their minor league crop.
A strike to Austin Riley, who has struck out twice already this afternoon. Once in the first and once in the third. Both strikeout victims from Alex Mills, and now down in the count 0-2. Jim, you're close to this, and Dan, I'll get your take on this in a second. I'll ask Jim first. We talk about prospects so much. Is it possible that they are somewhat overvalued when it comes to those trade discussions?
Yes and no. I mean, I think in some ways it's hard to overvalue them because the ones you hit on, you have cost control, especially the first 3 years of their career. They're so cheap that, when Aaron Judge goes out and hits 52 home runs and he's making a little over $500,000 a year, I mean, not that the Yankees have financial problems, you almost can't put a price on what that's worth. On the other hand, and I love prospects as much as anyone, they aren't sure things. You can't factor that all your prospects are going to be as good as you think they are. In fact, and I'd be interested in Dan's thoughts on this, I think one of the key things you have to do as an organization is not just scout the others, is you have to know your own players. And people said that's what John Sherholtz maybe did as well as anything when the Braves had that really long run. They made all kinds of trades, but he generally kept on to his players who wound up being the best big leaguers. And outside of Jason Schmidt, it wasn't too often he traded a guy who really blossomed into something.
I have to give Bobby Cox a lot of credit with that as well. An outstanding evaluator of talent, going back to his days with the Toronto Blue Jays. Those 2 World Championships for the Blue Jays had a lot of Bobby Cox's fingerprints on them.
Jim, you hit the nail on the head. We talk so much about acquiring talent within the game. But first and foremost, you have to know the talent within your own system. You cannot miss on your guys. So, Paulie, when you're good at doing that, you know the players that you can trade, and you know the ones that are going to be the impact players that you cannot move under any conditions. So you've got to be very, very good at evaluating your own players.
Max Scherzer taking home another Cy Young Award, passed through this fall league a few years back. As the bases are loaded with 1 out. Inning started with a walk to Lourdes Gurriel. The second walk of the afternoon issued by Stinnett. Then a hit by pitch on Jonathan Davis, who was attempting to bunt. And then a strikeout of Chavis, and now the walk to load the bases to Austin Riley. And that will bring up the batting champ out here in the Arizona Fall League, Eric Falia, who walked and scored back in the 3rd. So yet another chance for the Peoria Javelinas to really blow things open here, with Acuna on deck as well.
I mean, from a performance standpoint, you have the 2 best hitters in the league coming up with the bases loaded. This is exactly what Peoria is hoping for.
Stinnett deals outside, a ball and no strikes.
Dan, when you were talking about valuing your young players as an organization, other than a couple of teams, do you think that model of signing a stud like a Machado or a Harper to $500 million or whatever the number is going to be, to have all that money tied up into one player?
No, Joe, I'm not a huge proponent of that. Unless your market size is such, you can have a payroll of $200+ million. When proportion of your player payroll gets taken up too much by one player, it takes away your entire flexibility to build a roster. And you saw this postseason with the 2 teams that ended up in the World Series. Besides their frontline talent, which was outstanding, it was their depth of talent through the course of the year that allowed them to sustain the attrition of 162 days. When you got a lot of money tied up in one player, it becomes very problematic to build that kind of depth.
Here's one for you, Danny. One of these players who could get a lot of money in the next couple of years, a guy you know very well, and a guy that we talked to, Nolan Arenado. I mean, I'm not asking for the exact terms, but I mean, do you think he would be on that level of, they were starting to hear about the $400 or $500 millions for Harper and Machado? Do you think he's up in that neighborhood?
Paul, it's a great question. I'm going to beg off on the answer to that. I think it's going to depend upon the next 2 years that he has. I'm curious if Nolan ages like I think he will, yes. But I think he's going to have to show over the next 2 years that, the age regression part of the analysis of players is not going to be pertinent to him, because, when you look at corner players in particular, as great as he is defensively, your value is going to still come overall in his offensive capabilities. So you want to make sure, that you're right on that long-term decision, because if not, it cripples your organization.
Isn't it amazing, though, about Nolan Arenado, who really can't run, but has ungodly range at third base.
Well, it gets back, and we'll look at athleticism a little bit later in the broadcast, but his first step quickness and his baseball instincts to the ball, Joe, is simply outstanding. And he's one of the few guys that I watched in my career that was moving to where the ball was going to be hit before it actually was hit, a la Brooks Robinson from years ago, and that's a special gift that Nolan has. And his body control. For a big guy, his agility to be able to put his body in positions to execute skills is outstanding.
Acuna fights that one off, and it falls into right center field. Gurriel is in, so is Davis. A 2-run single for in the second inning and walked back in the third.
Zach Houston's a big boy, 6'5", 250. You can see slinging it. Kind of a three-quarter delivery.
Acuna was on the move. Naylor fights it off, 0-2.
He misses a lot of bats. Doesn't always know where the ball's going. He gets a lot of run and sink on the fastball. That's what he relies on. He uses a strikeout pitch. His slider also can get swings and misses. It comes down, we saw the stats there. He strikes out a bunch of guys and he walks a guy every other inning. Throws more strikes, he'll move up to the big leagues.
Made some improvements this year with his fastball location, and I think a lot of the guys that we have seen rush it up there in the mid-90s, and it's like they're doing a lot of heaving and really not a lot of locating. And you'd like to see where the game is going. You'd like to see pitchers really develop better command as they make their way towards the major leagues with their fastball.
Raleigh off third, Acuna off of first. Naylor flies one down the left field line. Burks into foul ground, has room for out number 3, but 2 more runs come across on the Ronald Acuna RBI, 2 RBI single. It is 6-2 Javelinas.
Tops.com.
Beautiful day in Scottsdale for the 2017 Arizona Fall League Championship game presented by I Promise. Paul Severino, Joe McGrain, Jim Callis of MLBpipeline.com, and Dan O'Dowd, who joins us for a different perspective this week. From a GM's point of view, we hear a lot of the buzzwords getting thrown around. Dan, athleticism is at the top of that list, but when you really break it down, what does it all mean?
Well, I've got a whole checklist for me, Paul, that I showed up at the ballpark every day. When I would think of athleticism, I had categories that I'd look at, and all of them are important. The three that were imperative for me were athletic instincts, body control and agility, and explosion. We've already seen it here today with Robles and Acuna, the explosion that they have in the game, and the unique athletic ability. Joe, when you look at pitchers, you can attest to this. When you have body control on the mound, you have a better chance to duplicate your delivery. Look at the play Riley just made. That was quickness right there. That was quickness, and that was athletic ability to be able to put his body in a position to execute a skill. So every time a ball is put in play, you see some form of athleticism on the field.
And that was Nolan Arenado-like, wasn't it?
It was.
Burks is retired on a slick 5-3, and now Sean Murphy takes a called strike.
One thing I wanted to bring up with Sean Murphy, and Dan, we were all talking about him before the game and how much you were impressed with him as a receiver. Kind of got lost in the shuffle there last inning, but I thought he stole a strike, that full count pitch to Eric Falia. The way he received it so quietly, he subtly moved it back into the strike zone. I thought he stole a strike there, and it almost helps Stinnett get out of a big inning.
Jimmy, I think he's been doing it all game long. I mean, when I look at catchers, I look for guys that actually beat the ball to the spot instead of meeting the ball at the spot. He's been beating the ball to the spot the entire game, which allows his hands to work very, very softly, specifically underneath the low pitch. And his blocking skills, he's made 3 tremendous blocks today. So he is a very, very advanced defensive catcher. This part of the game is probably going to have to catch up a little bit, but this is a good-looking defensive catcher.
And I really like him defensively, too. I think he's the best catching prospect in the league. I don't think he's never really hit for high average even in college, but I think he'll hit for enough power with the defense to maybe be, I think he's a big league starter.
Yeah, he's a little comp for me of a Danny Wilson years ago in Seattle. Similar body type, similar movements behind the plate. I think the A's really have a good defensive catcher. We'll just have to stay very patient with his bat.
Yeah, he has those soft hands behind the plate, and I like the way he really sticks it when the pitcher locates and really presents the ball very well to the umpire.
He's got real good pace, too, behind the plate with his pitchers, Joe. And, there seems to be an emotional connection between him and the pitcher, and you know how crucial that can be.
Oh, yeah, Jake. Here we go.
Robles went, and it is 0-2. Well, Joe, Zoik has settled down. First inning, he was very deliberate. This inning, not at all working quickly.
Dan and I were talking about how it looked like the fatigue was kind of setting in through the long season. Didn't really seem to have arm speed, but he's been very economical.
Lined out towards center. Jonathan Davis puts it away. A 1-2-3 fifth for T.J. Zoik. His Peoria Javelinas have a 6-2 lead. MLB Network special coverage of the 2017 Arizona Fall League Championship game is presented by I Promise. Live in focus. MLB Network has the offseason covered, featuring an all-star lineup led by baseball's only off-season TV morning show. It's Game On, 24/7, 365. Our regular prime time returns Monday, November 18th, only on MLB Network. Back here in Scottsdale, Paul Severino, Joe McGrain, Jim Callis of MLBpipeline.com. Dan O'Dowd with us as well. Bottom of the fifth, 6-2 Peoria on top as Alex Jackson takes ball one. Alex Jackson, Luis Urias, and Lourdes Gurriel, the bottom third of the Peoria order, as they look to tack on to a 4-run cushion here in the Arizona Fall League Championship game. Zach Houston delivers low. So we've got Houston on the mound, Simcox at short, Cody Eves at second base, a couple of Tigers floating around. The Tigers, as we talked earlier about the Houston Astros winning a World Series championship, one big part of that was acquiring Justin Verlander, which, of course, Jim Callis signified the beginning of a rebuild in Detroit. As their farm system is currently constructed right now, how do the Tigers look for that rebuild?
It's going to take them a while, but I think they recognize that, and that's why they parted with Verlander. They've had, if you look at the farm system rankings for the last decade, they've had one of the thinnest farm systems in baseball. But things are looking up now. In that trade, they got 3 quality prospects for Verlander. They got Franklin Perez, who's the best prospect in the system now. They got Jake Rogers, who's a really intriguing catching prospect. And they got Daz Cameron, center fielder Mike's son, who's also interesting. They also made trades with the Cubs. They sent Alex Avila and Justin Wilson to Chicago. They got Isaac Paredes and Heimer Candelario, who are 2 interesting guys. They made a trade with Diamondbacks. You throw in their draft last year, I think they got one of the steals in the first round with Alex Faedo, who was the MVP of the College World Series. And they got guys like Ronaldo Rivera, who's an outfielder first baseman, Joey Morgan, who's a catcher, Sam McMillan, another catcher. They pounded it internationally, too. Shortstop Alvaro Gonzalez, probably their best international guy. So they're on the way up. It's going to take a while, but they made a lot of impressive strides in 2017.
I don't know. Something gives me a sense that you may have left somebody out.
Well, I will admit I'd written a short story about it a couple weeks ago, so I was looking at my notes. So I didn't have all those guys off the top of my head.
A broken bat, humpback liner off the bat of Alex Jackson, one away here in the fifth. Dan O'Dowd, from a GM's perspective, I would imagine that there are some parts excitement and some parts when you hear the word rebuild.
Yeah, actually, Paul, if you've got everybody on the same page, I mean everybody from ownership on down, it's actually an extremely enjoyable process because you have everybody in the organization focused on all the same thing. And so you're kind of going through the struggles collectively together. And when you get through it and you get to the other side, it's a very rewarding feeling for everybody within the organization. But you're right, the losses do add up, and no matter where you are in the process, the losses do tear at you.
Dan, is there more of a template in, let's just say, rebuilding the big league team than trying to get strong up the middle from the catcher to the shortstop, second baseman, and center fielder?
Perfect world, Joe. Absolutely. You want to build from the middle, and you want to build out. You want your best athletes to be in the middle, the guys with the biggest upside. Because, if you look at your corner profile, that's where you get your powers and your run production. If you're able to start picking that up in the middle of your diamond along with defense, it makes it so much then easier to build on the outer edges.
0-2 to Luis Urias, had a sac fly in the second, flew out in the third. It's a piece of that one to stay alive, still 0-2.
And Jimmy will tell you, too, is that, because he talks to organizations all the time, it is painful for the people, for the GM to go through rebuilding. It's miserable. But for the player development department, the scouts, both professionally and amateur-wise, it's kind of an enjoyable part of it because they're out. They know that someday if they do their job well, the Major League team is going to be very good.
Inside, and I think that did get a piece of Urias. So he will reach after the hit by pitch.
Well, we talked about it earlier when Houston came in. He's a heaver. He just reaches back and lets it fly. And the key to his success going forward is being able to locate and command that heater.
But, Joe, you're right. It's a real problem for me within our game right now. We see so many kids like this that are blessed with a great arm that really have no foundation of a consistent delivery, but they throw hard. And, if we as an industry need to do a better job of getting these guys to learn and understand the art of pitching a little bit, even though we realize this is probably going to be a bullpen guy. It's just that these are turning into the rules rather than the exceptions. And when you came up, it was the opposite way.
Yeah, you were thinking about the three elements of pitching: velocity, movement, and location. And they've kind of viewed on equal terms, where it seems like velocity is riding way out front, whether it's the showcase where every pitcher is coming in there just trying to see how hard he can throw to impress pro scouts.
Ultimately, at the end of the day, that's what gets seen, and Jim will tell you that more than anybody.
Runner goes, throw to second is in time as Murphy throws out a runner.
And again, that's what we were talking about. You see the transfer and release on Murphy. He threw right from his ear. He was relaxed in his stance. I mean, that is outstanding.
He's thrown out 33% of base stealers in his pro career, and he gets another one right there for out number 2.
Well, he's got a very confident way about it. You're talking about getting that throw and release. And a pretty good jump by Urias, a pretty dandy runner, and it doesn't get much better than that.
Gurriel, long fly ball, left field, off the wall.
But again, that's what we just talked about, guys. If it's a mistake pitch up in the zone, because now it's all about velocity, not location. And the other point I wanted to ask Joe real quick is that, Joe, the biggest issue I see with pitching on a consistent basis is simply balance over the rubber.
Good point.
If you can't maintain balance, you can't then have any separation. If you have bad separation, you're always going to be catching up down the hill, and you'll never throw fastball strikes consistently.
Yeah, one of the things that we were taught very early in the Cardinal organization is really just about, it sounds very simple, but it's gather and go. And that means collect yourself and gather over the pitching rubber with balance, and then practicing drills like you should be able to just hold your knee lift in that position for 3 to 5 seconds.
Absolutely.
Just to prove to yourself that you're balanced.
So all the young kids, pitchers that are watching the game today, you don't need a pitching coach to help you get great at being balanced over the rubber. That's something you can do on your own. Get in front of a mirror and really, really practice your balance. If you get balanced over the rubber, you'll be a consistent strike thrower.
Didn't Dan Herron do that? Just as part of his delivery?
Yeah, that was more incorporated into his delivery, but we were talking, pitching as a whole about, as a group, about having balance over the pitching rubber to where your body control, as you were talking about, Dan, becomes more coordinated, and all those pitches start to have better accuracy.
Look at Houston putting that one away. A long run into foul ground. Well, Joe, you're right. Pitchers,
body control.
They're athletes after all. A nice play by Houston for out number 3. It is 6-2 as we move to the 6th inning in the 2017 AFL Championship game.
Dove Men Plus Care.
Visit the online shop of Major League Baseball at MLBshop.com for the largest selection of authentic caps, t-shirts, jerseys, hoodies, collectibles, and more. Celebrate your favorite team at MLBshop.com. And relive the 2017 season with RBI Baseball 17, packed with fast-paced pick-up-and-play MLB action on all your favorite MLB teams, players, ballparks, and much more. Get RBI Baseball today for Xbox One, PlayStation 4, Nintendo Switch, and mobile devices. Learn more at RBIGame.com. Back here for the top of the 6th inning, and TJ Zoik back out there. That was his 61st pitch and 43rd strike, as he will face 2, 3, and 4. Jacob Brugman. Soft line drive, center field, falls in front of Davis. A leadoff knock here in the 6th.
Well, let's see if Zoik can roll up that double play ball. He's had a couple of them. He's been very economical. We talked to Luis Salazar, his manager, and he said he had designs of he was in this type of position to run him out there for 75 pitches. And the way that he's pitched this afternoon, really nothing is telling you that he won't be able to get through this inning before that.
Sheldon Noisy on the ground to second. One double play. That'll help.
Nice call, Joe.
I got here early today.
I mean, early on, he was struggling in the first inning and even in the second. And it seems like since Falia made that diving catch to get him out of the second, it gave him new life. He's been throwing harder. We've seen more 92s, 93s, 94s. First inning, it was a lot of 89, 91. And credit to him for competing out there when he didn't have his best stuff early.
Yeah, I always thought the difference between, winning or losing as a starter was 3 or 4 pitches in the game, and it's what you did with those 3 or 4 pitches usually is going to swing either way for you. And he had that break with that nice play. Was able to come back and pitch well behind it.
Breaking ball gets the outside corner, and it's 1-2 to Cody Eves, who had a sacrifice fly in the first inning. Since that 2-run first, not much offensively for the Mesa Solar Sox.
Well, he went up with the fastball, and he has pitched with pretty good touch and feel. Let's see if he goes with the straight change. Now going with the hook here.
Joe, I usually get myself into trouble when I do this without rehearsing it first. Do you see any Corey Kluber in that delivery?
A little bit, but Corey's got kind of that short arm action. We were talking about how catchers throw, where they're kind of very short out of the glove. See kind of the similar body style, but he's a little bit long armor, as he would be as a guy that's 6 feet 7 inches.
That's past Gurriel and into right field. A hot shot off the bat of Eves, and a 2-out base hit here in the 6th. And that will bring out Luis Salazar. And he motions to the Peoria bullpen. This base hit off the bat of Eves is going to do it for Zoik. But 5 2/3, pretty good innings. After giving up the 2 runs in the top of the first, a solid outing. His last of 2017, 6-2 in Scottsdale. Welcome back to Scottsdale. Paul Severino, Joe McGrain, Jim Callis, Dan O'Dowd with you. A 6-2 lead for the Peoria Javelinas. 5 2/3 sharp innings from T.J. Zoik. Andrew Case comes in out of the Peoria bullpen and delivers a strike to A.J. Simcox. Case signed by the Blue Jays as a non-drafted free agent in 2013. He was discovered at a Baseball Canada tournament. He threw a no-hitter in that tournament. I think that would get you on the map for sure.
Well, he talked about loving pitching in high leverage situations, wants to try to develop that changeup a little more. He's got one of these great old school quotes where he says, "My mindset moving forward is just to keep the intensity going and help the boys win." Give him the old what for.
Simcox grounded into a double play to end the first and grounded out to second in the fourth. Runner on at first is Cody Eves. 2 outs in the sixth. Eves on the move. A swing and a miss. Strike 3. Case comes in and gets the strikeout. Holding on to a 6-2 lead as we move to the last of the sixth in Scottsdale.
But I like him as a relief prospect. He's a guy who has good life on a 93, 96 mile an hour fastball. It's not just velocity. He's got a changeup that has splitter action that dives at the plate. The key for him is going to be refining the slider, which can get a little slurpy at times, but I like him. He's missed a lot of bats. I liked him in college at Texas A&M. I think we're going to see him in the big leagues in a year or so.
Well, let me ask you about that one. Because I like a breaking ball that's a little slurpy. Kind of a hybrid between a slider and a curveball. And so, how did you view that as a negative?
Well, you're right.
Gets around it a little too much?
Yeah, it could be either way. You can have the guy who's got the power of a slider and the break of a curve. I like that. That's a good slurp.
Colors.
Right. He's more of the slider gets away from him and gets a little bit loose, and it's less than desirable.
I think that'll play. A strikeout of Chavis. One of the many things, Dan O'Dowd, that we have seen on display outside of the heat coming out of the pitcher's arms, but a lot of athleticism so far this afternoon. From your perspective, a little closer to the field than us up here in the booth, what have you seen?
Yeah, I've seen it all. Paul, I've seen speed, quickness, athletic instincts, body control and agility, and explosion. It's athletes being able to put their body in a position to execute a skill, and we've been blessed today to see a lot of it.
Although, right there, Cody Eves.
High sky in Arizona.
Yes, and then there's that.
Yeah, that was way up there for a long time. And again, not really from where I sit. Dan, you don't have the overhang that I don't see a cloud in the sky, and they often talk about needing those clouds as the backdrop for the
Paul,
depth
and I'll
perception.
tell you, in Arizona, I've seen that happen over and over again. For some reason down here, that plays really, really difficult in the field on days like today.
So now Falia popped up left field. Burks battling the sun. And that's out number 2.
I think some of it may have to do with a lot of the ballparks having the silver seats, adding to the glare as well.
Yeah, or people wearing white. I mean, it's hot.
Guys, we had a game here in spring training years ago. We had outfielders, 3 of them lose fly balls in the outfield during spring training. So I've seen it a lot.
Now Ronald Acuña's had himself a nice afternoon.
Paul, getting back to athleticism, it's, just look at this kid up here and the explosiveness. It can be just that little thing. It's the core of his body. When I talk about core strength, I'm talking about from your knees up to the top of your chest. And because baseball is an explosion game, it starts from the ground force, you're ground up, but it's a rotational game. And this kid is, he reminds me of a younger Andrew Jones with a little bit higher energy level, but it's just an explosive athlete. And he is very rotationally strong when he makes his first impactful move to the ball.
This one is skied out toward right, and Kyle Tucker moves in a couple of steps. And the AFL MVP, Ronald Acuña, is retired for out number 3 in the 6th. Through 6 in the championship game, Peoria in control, 6-2.
Network.
Welcome back to Scottsdale. Before the game, the Darnell Stenson Sportsmanship Award presented to Eric Falia, and the Joe Black MVP Award presented to Ronald Acuña, who has done a lot of damage here in the Arizona Fall League, but especially in the games that we have covered on MLB Network as well. A couple of home runs last week, 3 RBIs to this point here, and really living up to the hype, Jim Callis, coming into this one, that he was going to be one of the top prospects, if not the top prospect in this league. And, of course, the question then begs is what could be next for him in 2018, perhaps opening day roster?
I say no, just because I don't think the Braves are ready to contend out of the gate. He's only 19 years old. He hasn't played in AAA much yet. And even if you think he's ready, I don't think it makes sense to get his service time clock starting ticking before you have to. To me, I would put him in AAA for the first 2-3 months of the season and go from there, no matter how well he plays.
Yeah, I agree with Jim completely. What you don't know is...
Up against the wall, Danny, hang on. Falia with another great defensive play. We've seen him dive into the right center field gap right there, contending with the wall. And a pretty out number 1 here in the 7th to
Paul,
Rob Tucker.
That's 3 outstanding at-bats today for Kyle Tucker, too. So he's had a very, very good day today. Great hands to hit. But getting back to Acuna, is that I think you just want to be patient with him. His skill level is outstanding. You want to make sure his emotional maturity level is going to be able to handle the failure at the, that he'll have an experience at the big league level. What you don't want to do with a kid like this is get him up to the big leagues in any way, shape, or form. Have to send him back out for more seasoning. When he comes, you want him to stay.
Kelvin Gutierrez takes low and away. Earlier, Dan, we took a look at kind of your breakdown and the definition of athleticism. We also hear the word makeup an awful lot. And I think that, again, whether it's Acuna or countless others in this league, we hear that word makeup thrown around a lot. But, for someone like yourself who actually has to evaluate these things, what would your definition of makeup be?
Well, it took me a lot of years to get to this definition, but I had a personal checklist, and I showed up at the ballpark every single day with this checklist. And not that I would check off each box, but I would try to get as good a feel as I possibly could on each player in these categories. First and foremost, for me, a player has to love the game. The game of baseball is so difficult to play. Great read and break in center field. They're so difficult to play that if you don't love all parts of it, not just the good time, but the bad time, and that's where the gap is between a passion to play and a love of the game. Passion's contending upon what happens in the game. When you love it, you love all parts of it. So for me, love of the game is paramount. Everything else flows from the love of the game, and that last one, team before self. If you're going to develop a winning culture, you need a group of players that care more about winning than they do their individual achievements and awards.
Joe, you could teach a guy how to throw a slider or a curveball. You could teach a guy to maybe incorporate a little bit more power into his game, but you can't teach the love of baseball.
No, and really it just gets in your blood at a very young age. You're thinking about it all the time, digesting all the games that are on TV, and there's that divide where baseball is an individual sport based around a team concept.
Burks pops this one up. Davis takes control in center, waving everybody off for out number 3. 3 up and 3 down for Case here in the 7th. We stretch in Scottsdale, 6-2 Peoria.
Years.
You okay back there, buddy?
Welcome back to MLB Network's coverage of the 2017 Arizona Fall League Championship game presented by I Promise with Joe McGrain, MLBPipeline.com's Jim Callis, and Dan O'Dowd. Paul Severino back here with you at Scottsdale Stadium in Arizona. This copyrighted telecast is presented by authority of the Office of the Commissioner of Baseball and may not be reproduced or retransmitted in any form, and the accounts and descriptions of this game may not be disseminated without express written consent. Look at that. Coming to the ballpark in full Cubs uni.
That's love of the game.
That is love of the game. No doubt about it. Worried about that next generation sticking around, and that's one of the reasons why our wonderful Commissioner Rob Manfred is trying to improve the pace of play. And the Arizona Fall League has always been a testing ground of different rules throughout the years, whether it's replay, slide rule, pace of play. They're working on a 12-second pitch clock with the bases empty, a 15-second pitch clock with runners on base. Time, trying to keep it nice and tight between batters. There are breaks in between innings, too. All these things to try to keep the pace of the game going. Joe, we've seen a few years of this now, but certainly here in 2017, they're working on this 12 and 15-second pitch clock. But generally speaking, how do you think it should get implemented?
I think, first of all, from a personal standpoint, I wouldn't have any difficulty at all with the pitch clock. Steve Carlton, Jim Cott were my idols growing up, and they were get it, throw it guys, very decisive. And I think pitchers are better when they are working quicker. They're not, they're throwing their pitches with conviction, and there has to be a way to implement that at the Major League Baseball level. As great as the World Series was, you're talking about 3 and 4 and sometimes 5 catchers' trips to the mound, and I think there are a lot of adjustments that need to be made from the pace of play standpoint. And really, I think it just makes the game a lot more crisp and a lot more enjoyable, and the time of the game really has kind of gotten away from us.
Did not get the back foot of Naylor, nor did he swing. So the count now 1-1 from Dean Dietz, who is the 5th pitcher of the afternoon for the Mesa Solar Sox, number 26 prospect in the Astros organization, according to MLB.com.
And as we saw in the World Series, they may need to reinforce that bullpen a little bit in the coming years, and he's a guy who can do that. He's up to 97 and a pretty hard slider, too. They've had a lot of success drafting players out of Oklahoma junior colleges, and he's one of them. 11th rounder out of Northeastern Oklahoma A&M, JC.
1-2 to Naylor. Once again, they get a check, and once again, he holds up 2-2. Naylor, part of a San Diego Padres farm system that has certainly gone through its ups and downs the last few seasons. A.J. Preller took over, really went all in, traded a lot of the pieces to win now. That didn't work. They had to break it down. So, Jim Callis, where do the Padres stand as Naylor is called out on strikes for out number 1?
Well, they've built the farm system back up. I think it's one of the top 5 farm systems in the game. They drafted my favorite player out this year's draft, number 3 overall pick, Mackenzie Gore. I think he's a left-handed pitcher who's going to fly through the minors. We've raved about Urias, 3 weeks in a row. You guys saw him in the Fall Stars game. I've been on the broadcast the last 2 weeks. Fernando Tatis Jr. might be an even better shortstop prospect than Urias. He's tremendous. They have pitching as well behind Gore with guys like Cal Quantrill, Adrian Morhone. Michel Baez is a guy who really burst on the scene in the Midwest League. They got a lot of depth. Very balanced system, hitters and pitchers. So I think, we were talking earlier, not every prospect's going to make it. That's why the depth is important, is that not all these guys will make it, but they have enough guys, hitters and pitchers, that they should be able to add to guys that they called up this year, like Manny Margot and Hunter Renfroe, and build a contender there in a couple of years.
Jackson chases. Murphy throws to first to complete the strikeout. 2 away here in the 7th. So, Jim, if we look at your top 10 farm systems, we've talked about the Braves and the Padres, but rounding out your top 10, you see some heavy hitters there, too.
Yeah, if I'm another team, it's not making me feel good to see the Dodgers and Yankees on this list, right, knowing that they can, we have that big free agent class coming on the scene next year, and those teams can spend, but they also have a ton of young talent coming up as well. I don't think the Dodgers getting the World Series this year or the Yankees getting to the playoffs that was not a fluke. We're going to see more of that in the near future.
Here is the aforementioned Luis Urias, a sacrifice fly in the second, flew out to center field in the third and was hit by a pitch back in the fifth. Called strike 2 on a breaking ball.
Just with the success and the history of the Yankees, it just seems it's weird with so many players coming out of their organization. Young players, good young players.
Yeah, I mean, the one year that they really rebuilt last year, they turned Chapman into Gleyber Torres. They turned Brian McCann into a couple, we saw Albert Abreu out here. I don't know if he was in the Fall Stars game, but he was the most impressive pitcher I saw in any single game out here. And they also got Jorge Guzman in that deal, who's the guy we're going to be hearing about. So the one year they rebuilt, they really added a lot of talent. Also, Clint Frazier and Justice Sheffield, who we saw Sheffield out here in the Andrew Miller trade. So it was, the Yankees obviously want to win every year, but having to take a step back in 2016 really is going to push them a few steps forward. Plus, I mean, they're just so good internationally. They've drafted well. And now it's scary because you're going to have young guys. It's enabling them to reset the luxury tax. I bet they don't go over the luxury tax next year and resets that, which makes it easier for them to spend. Plus, they also have ammunition to go out and make trades for basically anyone they want because they have the depth. And you have these cheap guys not only let you reset the luxury tax. If I'm paying Aaron Judge $500,000, and maybe I can go pay Bryce Harper $40 million next year.
Outside, count runs full with 2 outs to Luis Urias here in the bottom of the 7th inning. And what's interesting about the Yankees is that their quote-unquote rebuild took all of about 6 weeks. And even though they quote-unquote rebuilt, they still haven't had a losing season in over 20 years. So their rebuild, if you will, was not nearly as long and painful as the Houston Astros, a team that lost 300 games over the course of 3 years. And when you look at their future lineup, Jim, the 2020 lineup, not only are a lot of these guys already with some major league experience, but even when we fast forward to 2020, do we see any 30-year-olds on this list? Maybe 2, 3. I mean, not many. Not many.
And I think the difference, obviously, between the Astros and the Yankees is the Yankees can go out and spend $200+ million a year on payroll, and the Astros couldn't do that. So the Astros had to tear it all the way back down. If you're the Yankees, not only can you spend that, given the New York market and that ballpark and what it costs to go see a game there, I don't think their fans are necessarily going to take a 100-loss team as well. But you're right, they didn't have to retool. And the scary thing is, you look at these guys. Even Gleyber Torres was a guy. We seemed like we talked about him every broadcast last year. I mentioned Abreu and Sheffield, who were both out here this year. And then again, I talked about depth. But let's say Sheffield and Abreu and Chance Adams don't live up to expectations. They got more pitchers where those are coming from. Estevan Florial's a guy, one of the younger players in the league out here. His tools are right up there with Acuna and Robles. He didn't have a very good year out here, but from a tools standpoint, he ranks right with them.
Urias off of first, that one inside on Gurriel. Count 2 balls and no strikes. Gurriel flew out to right field in the 2nd inning, walked and scored in the 4th, and had a double in the 5th. Signed a 7-year, $22 million deal with the Blue Jays last November, and he swings and misses 2-1.
His hair is not nearly as spectacular as it was last Saturday. He obviously got it cut,
cleaned it up.
He had the kind of like the sideshow Bob look last week, but it's a lot cleaner this week.
I think they called it the palm tree haircut.
Yeah, it looked like a palm tree.
Yeah, I was going to say it looked like it could blend in with a lot of the native cacti out here in the Valley of the Sun.
It was an interesting look. He and Yuli, they, hey, if you got it, flaunt it, I guess. And boy, do they ever. He defected Cuba with his brother Yuli after the Caribbean Series in February of 2016. Before signing the aforementioned 7-year, $22 million deal.
And when they signed him, they were looking at a guy they thought was going to be able to hit for power and average. He has not done that yet. His first year here in the minor leagues was a disappointment. He's had a solid AFL. They're hoping he can build off of that.
I was watching him take batting practice today, and I thought he had kind of a little move where, as he was going into the kind of that launch position, where the bat kind of went back out and away from him, almost in a creating an out and around move as opposed to really working inside through the baseball. A couple of things in his swing that need to be ironed out, and I think the hitting will take off after that.
Runner on the move with 3-2, floated out toward right. Coming in is Tucker to make the catch. Inning over. We are through 7 in Scottsdale. The Javelinas with a 6-2 lead in the championship game. MLB Network special coverage of the 2017 Arizona Fall League Championship game is presented by I Promise. Live in focus. Paul Severino, Joe McGrain, Jim Callis of MLBpipeline.com. Dan O'Dowd with us as well. Beautiful afternoon here in Scottsdale. The championship game and the Peoria Javelinas in control, up 6-2. And they turn to a fireballing youngster, the youngest player in the Arizona Fall League, Andres Munoz. First pitch swinging for Sean Murphy is fouled away, 0-1.
18 years of age, the youngest player and the best fastball. And the thing that impressed me the last time we saw him, not only the heater in triple digits, but a good tight slider to go with it.
Hey, he was silly when we saw him on Saturday, Joe. I mean, we saw him hit 102 on the scoreboard gun, but I was more impressed, I think, like you were. It's like he threw 89, 90-mile-an-hour sliders that came to the plate and just made like a 90-degree left turn away from the hitters. It was unhittable. I don't know how you're supposed to hit him when he's throwing. You know, we've seen 3 pitches now, 101, 98, and 99. So you got to gear up for that fastball. If he throws the slider, you almost have no hope.
He has a controllable delivery, very fast arm. Let's see if he throws one of those wipeout sliders that we got a chance to see last week.
Well, it's never easy to face this guy from what we have seen and heard, but the guys that are hitting in this inning, catching it just in time. Look at those shadows creeping up before it really starts to get tricky. So, you know, perhaps by the 9th inning, it'll get a little funky out there. And with a guy bringing it the way Munoz is, I don't necessarily want to call it an advantage, but certainly the shadows would be a disadvantage.
Even though Murphy has been understandably tardy on these last couple of fastballs, let's see if he breaks out the wipeout slider.
100 miles an hour, too far in, no swing, and it's 2-2.
The reason the hitters are so vulnerable because they have to get everything started. That's why you see a lot of those check swings, because they've got to get the head out because that ball's getting there in a hurry, and the slider becomes a real good pitch.
At 99, he retires Murphy. Dan O'Dowd, who we have seen Murphy, who strikes out here for the second time today, but defensively he has stepped up.
Yeah, he's put on a clinic behind the plate, Paulie. When we talked about athleticism, look at these blocks. You can tell this young man's worked very, very hard at that part of the game. Anticipating the ball away, he framed it perfectly, stole the strike, a glove hand transfer. Simply outstanding. This kid has got a chance to be an outstanding big league defensive catcher.
And that's why you really love to see a young catcher that's proficient at blocking the ball, because you know that he's put in the work. A lot of guys like going to the cage and swinging the bat, but that's the hard work. That's the real grind. The sweat is
no doubt, Joe.
Blocking pitches.
Absolutely, and it's a repeatable skill. If you work at it hard enough and you're a good enough athlete, you're going to get good at it. So he showed me the entire package today, and I'm very, very excited for this young man's future.
Cut on and missed by Victor Robles, who singled and scored in the first, flew out in the second and fifth.
I tell you guys, it looks pretty hard from down here too, just so you know.
You can see the
yeah, you can probably hear the sound of it.
Yeah, I'm hearing the seams, Joe, kind of whistle through the air, and it's it's funny. There's a little bit of effort, but I wouldn't call this max effort either. The ball really just gets out of his hands. It's an electric arm.
3-1 to Robles.
So if he has this on a decent delivery and a healthy arm, and we haven't seen the slider, but we've seen it last week. I mean,
yeah, I know where you're going. Yeah.
So finish the sentence. Why not? Why isn't he up there?
Yeah, well, the closer in Seattle, Diaz. Where was he at, Jim? Was he at Double-A when he got to the call to the big leagues?
Yeah, he was.
And so you look at this kid and you look at him. There's a lot of similarities. Body type, arm action, electricity in the arm. If he does have two pitches, it does not have to be a plus command guy, just a general command guy. But, Joe, you do want to make sure that he can throw strikes when he has to throw strikes.
On the ground, left side, diving stab at short, but no play at first. An infield single for Robles.
And, Robles, guys, you just watch his body movements. You see his explosive first step there out of the box and how easily he glided down the line. I mean, the Nationals, I'm sure, are very excited about this young man's future. Look at this. Look at the explosion. See those? Your speed is determined by your first 3 steps out of your break, whether that's stealing a base or whether that's hitting out of the box. His first 3 steps are explosive.
That's the first 2 things that scouts usually look at is throwing ability and speed.
Jacob Brugman fouls that one away.
You're interesting because Michael Taylor took a huge step for him this year. It'll be interesting spring training when this young man shows up, because for me, he's knocking on the door if that makeup part of it is all in line. So it'll be curious with Adam Eaton coming back from that injury, Jim, how this all plays out for them in spring training next in 2018.
No, you're right, and the difference is, we were talking about Acuna with the Braves. The Nationals are trying to win, and if you think Victor Robles is your best player, he was already up toward the end of this year, and he's on their playoff roster. You don't fool around with the service time. You put him in the lineup. So I think if he has a good spring training, he might be their starter.
Okay, now watch, see if he's going to pull up here.
What were you looking for, first to third speed?
I was looking for first to third, but he made a decision early on that where the outfielder was playing. Again, baseball instincts. He knew exactly where the right fielder was playing. See him peek? So he knew exactly where the right fielder was playing, and when he was going to get that ball, realizing that would not be a good play here. Do not make, the second out of the inning at third base in the situation where you're down here by 4 runs.
I'm curious here. He's thrown 18 straight fastballs. We saw the slider was so good last Saturday. Why wouldn't you at least mix in a slider or 2?
I will say neither of those balls, Jim, were hit very hard, though. They have not squared them up. They just have found some holes.
I still would like to see him mix that in, just for the fact that we've profiled of it, and it's entertainment. He can't disappoint us.
Hey, Joe, it's a network game. He's trying to show you how hard he throws. That's all.
Well, we already know that.
We were talking about, why, this guy, how far is he away from the big leagues? The crazy thing is he's only 18 years old. He's pitched 2 1/3 innings of full season ball in his career.
Jim, it's crazy that he's this age and he's got such little experience, and he's even in this league right now competing the way that he is.
Yeah, and he doesn't look overmatched.
He doesn't at all.
He's had a great fall.
It looks like he's got a very, very slow heartbeat on the mound. Very impressive.
Well, Mesa's got the guy that they want up, and Sheldon Noisy, 2 on and 1 out in the 8th. That one is low and away, a ball and a strike.
That's what happens, Joe, as you know. If you wait too deep in an inning to throw a slider, your first one's not very good. And this is an area Austin Jackson's going to have to get better behind the plate. Just his overall pitch calling and selection today, for me, there's some ways to go there. He doubled up on it. That was better.
Yeah, the second one was much better, and I knew we're talking about sometimes you throw that first one and it's not too good, and you get greedy and try to throw a nastier one, and it just becomes a bad fastball that becomes very hittable.
See right there, you see Jackson stab at that pitch down and away, whereas Murphy would have framed that ball, beat it to the spot, and brought it back in. Watch Jackson. Jackson actually takes that ball a little further out of the strike zone because his body was moving away from his glove there. And on cue.
Yep, setting him up.
Well, again, you got to stay patient with this young man. Swings the bat well. It looks like he has some desire to catch.
Oh, he got crossed out.
Yeah, he got crossed up there. But he's got a ways to go with his hands, so he's just going to have to stay patient. He's going to have to work very, very hard with them to get him over the hump.
It's what umpires talk about when this guy is a stabber, and it's not the most enjoyable day behind the plate calling balls and strikes when you have a stabber, because they don't present pitches very well, and you get both dugouts on you, on the balls and strikes.
And it really began to manifest itself when you see somebody with this kind of arm and this kind of velocity. It can really overmatch you a little bit behind the plate.
Payoff pitch coming to Noisy. Swing and a miss, strike 3. 97 miles an hour and a huge strikeout for Munoz.
I'd like to make a point there, Paul. It's guys, from down behind the plate here, it's just not 97. He's got some deception in his delivery. He hides the ball behind him, so you're not seeing that ball until he's pretty much, Joe, out front, and he's shortening the distance a little bit. So add some deception on top of that velocity, and this guy's going to be hard to hit.
Yeah, good little shoulder turn and hip turn to where the ball just kind of pops out of his uniform a little bit to go with that velocity.
It's a short armor in the backside, too. It doesn't have length in the backside. So if we watch this pitch here, watch how short his arm in the backside is. So he's generating this kind of arm speed from a really short arc, which is exceptionally difficult to do and unusual. But that makes the ball, from an effective velocity standpoint, even look harder to the hitter.
Right on the hitter.
100 miles an hour, misses outside to Cody Eves, who had a sac fly in that 2-run first inning, and that has been it for Mesa. Kept off the scoreboard since. Eves also grounded out in the 3rd and singled in the 6th.
Somebody did a great job in Latin America finding this young man. Now watch the little shorter arc in the back. See how quick it is? There's no length to it at all. Look how he hides it behind that little hip turn and shoulder turn that he has. That means that ball's really jumping on you.
Perfect example of it there. I mean, if you didn't have the virtue of the radar gun, the hitters would go back to the dugout saying, he's got something, the ball is on top of you instantly.
Yeah, Joe, this is one you don't need a radar gun. The hitters are letting you know how hard he's throwing.
Exactly.
2-2 pitch coming. Gets a bat on that one, sends it out to deep center field, but Davis has room and puts it away for out number 3. Well, Eves gave it a ride, but Munoz works out of any trouble in the 8th. 6-2, Peoria.
MLB Network.
From creating a blockbuster trade to inking a big free agent signing, it's all part of how GMs try to craft a winning team in the offseason. See which clubs could use some finishing touches to succeed next season. MLB Tonight, weeknights at 8 Eastern on MLB Network. Welcome back. Look at that, huh? Cutie. Having fun at the ballpark. Beautiful afternoon on a Saturday. The AFL Championship game as Dakota Backus comes in. The sixth pitcher of the afternoon for Mesa. Threatened in the top of the eighth. Nothing came across home plate for him, so they still trail this one 6-2 as we go to the bottom of the eighth inning. Top of the order due up for Peoria. Jonathan Davis, Michael Chavis, and Austin Riley. Swing and a miss, 0-1. Backus, second time out here in the Arizona Fall League. Also pitched here in 2015. Davis has had himself a bit of a painful afternoon. Hit by a pitch twice, but it's all been worth it as he scored both times.
Backus is more of that mineral relief profile. The Nationals got him in a trade for Kurt Suzuki a couple years ago. Sinker slider guy. He'll mix 4 pitches, sit around 90-92. Slider's probably the best offering he has.
Got a little bit of what we used to call that Iron Mike delivery, where the elbow is kind of locked out and it's a straight, not straight over the top.
Well, going back from his to his last Fall League experience, he told this to the Quad City Times, did Backus. All of a sudden I found myself facing 9 studs in a row rather than 3 or 4 that are in a lineup for a lot of minor league teams. A lot of guys that I faced that fall are in the big leagues now. And the one thing I learned from that experience is you can't overdo it. I think I made it bigger than it was. So you put all of that, and we've been talking about this for the last couple of weeks. We've been talking about this for the last few years with this Arizona Fall League, is that for as terrific as some of these players are, as Davis flies one out towards center field over the head of Robles, and this one goes all the way to the wall. Davis flying around second, heading toward third with a leadoff triple in the 8th inning.
Still one of the most exciting plays in baseball is the triple. Hit by a guy who can pick him up and put him down. Just cutting those bases, and here the track meet begins once it's over the head of Robles, and he was low flying around the bases.
He's been fun to watch out here. I mean, he's almost, you're in this Peoria lineup where everybody's either a first-round pick or a top 100 prospect, and he's an exception. He's a 15th rounder out of Central Arkansas. I think he's a future 4th outfielder at the big league level. He can run, he can play defense. Dan noted his nice read earlier in the game. He's only 5'8", but he's put together pretty well. He's not a guy who gets the bat knocked out of his hands. He's got some pop, and it seems like I think I've seen them play 5 or 6 times, and I bet he has 12, 13 hits in the games I've seen him play. He always seems to put the barrel on the ball.
Infield in against Michael Chavis with a big insurance run. Just 3 offensive outs left here for Mesa once we get to the 9th inning. Already a 4-run deficit. So they play the infield in as Backus and Murphy get together. The point I guess I was going to make on Backus, but to open it up to all the players who play out here in the Arizona Fall League. And I don't know if you guys would agree or not, but I almost liken it to, when a head basketball coach has his guys run, and then shoot foul shots. Like, you're going to be out of breath when you're shooting foul shots with the game on the line. And the Arizona Fall League can be similar to that as Chavis drives one to the gap in right center field. It'll one-hop the wall. Davis will score easily, and now Chavis heading toward third. The throw is not in time. An RBI triple for Michael Chavis. It's 7-2.
Does it make me a bad person that I was rooting for another base runner so we could see Ronald Acuna hit one more time in this game?
No, not at all. Back-to-back triples, always good, entertaining. And I was going to say, as we've profiled many times, that this Peoria lineup is absolutely relentless.
And Chavis is not the runner that Jonathan Davis is. When he hit that ball, I thought it was going to be a double, especially when you factor in how quick Robles was going to get to the ball and how strong his arm is. And Chavis didn't hesitate, so kudos to him. I mean, it's a 7-2 game here, the longest season of your life, and he ran that ball out as hard as he could.
The 0-1 to Austin Riley misses. So once again, I'll try to finish my point. Just on, like, you get out here and it's top competition, but now it gets into that mental aspect of fighting through the fatigue almost to see if your game still can play at a high level when you're not at 100%. Chopped to short. They'll look the runner back and retire Riley for out number 1 in the 8th.
That's why I think it's so important to be able to pitch with command and with touch and feel, because that's what is really going to give you the ability to pitch through fatigue. And we talk about starting pitchers are going shorter and shorter in their outings, and they're really being trained to throw 5 innings and 100 pitches. So a lot of pitches in a short span of time, and you never get a chance to really see guys work out of jams or go through that third time in the order. And you know, the best way to do that when you're not at full strength or you find yourself tiring is pitching with touch and command and adding and subtracting with your pitches, upsetting the timing of the hitter.
And speaking of guys being tired, I mean, TJ Zoik looked very tired in the first inning when he was sitting around 89, 90 miles an hour.
He turned it on a little bit.
He got 17 outs, got two outs into the 6th inning. And, you know, like you mentioned, Joe, at the beginning of the game, when you pitch for this Peoria team, you just have to keep your team in the game because they're going to score runs for you, and he did that, and then they're 3 outs away from a championship right now.
And it's called, from a starting pitcher's perspective, it's just managing the game, staying out of that 3-run inning.
Fouled off. The pinch hitter here is Braden Bishop, number 5 prospect in the Seattle Mariners organization. Takes over for Eric Falia, who was 0 for 3.
Put on play, kid. Put on play.
Get those hands a little lowered, trying to get that bat head out a little more.
1-2 to Bishop, gets a piece of him, and he will reach. That'll bring up Ronald Acuna, but quickly on Bishop, had a chance to sit down with him last week before the military appreciation game and talk a little bit about his mom and the journey that his mom is going through, early onset Alzheimer's. If you didn't see it, not just because I was part of it, but a terrific feature on MLB Network. Get online, check that out. In fact, I tweeted a link to it if you'd like to check it out, but just a terrific background on a great kid in Braden Bishop. A pitching change here in Scottsdale. Runners on the corners in the 8th, and a 5-run lead for Peoria.
Network.
Weeknights on MLB Network. Join the off-season conversation with Rose and Millar on Intentional Talk at 7 Eastern. Then at 7:30, Brian Kenny debates off-season moves on the show for the thinking fan, MLB Now. They're back Monday only on MLB Network. We are back in Scottsdale. Ronald Acuna, first pitch swinging from Nolan Blackwood. Flies one out toward right center field. Robles underneath it. Bishop tags from first but heads back. Scoring easily is Chavis. And it is an 8-2 lead for Peoria on the sac fly by Acuna, his 4th RBI of the game.
Well, we talked about the great hitting acumen of Ronald Acuna. And just to see, let's take a look at him from the side and just look at the natural lift that he has in the swing and how quick that he gets the bat out there. That's probably been one of the more impressive things about him.
No, definitely. Watching that swing reminds me of the other side of the plate, obviously, but what we saw from Cody Bellinger last year. Just that same quick swing with a ton of loft, and balls tend to get out of the park in a hurry when those guys connect.
In 0-1 to Josh Naylor. Fouls that one off. So Nolan Blackwood takes over here out of the Oakland A's system. Spent the whole season at high A. Was 19 of 20 in save opportunities. Pitched in 44 games. This, of course, not a save situation as the umpires get together. I think the home plate umpire, Roberto Ortiz, may have taken a foul tip off his shin. Inside of the knee.
The shin guard does not wrap all the way around, and it got it perfectly in the imperfect spot.
14th round pick in 2016 from the University of Memphis is Nolan Blackwood. Naylor down the right field line, foul. Nice play down the line by the ball person. Ball boy, there we go. The 0-2 Naylor lines it foul again. Well, go ahead.
You want to take another shot at that?
I'm good, Joe. Go ahead. No? It will be an 0-2. High chop, right side. Gutierrez will tag Naylor for out number 3. Last chance here for Mesa. A couple of insurance runs in the 8th thanks to a Jonathan Davis triple and a Michael Chavis triple as well. 8-2 Peoria. 3 outs from an AFL championship. We're back for the 9th next.
Works Bleacher Features.
And that brings up Chris Bryant, the number 4 prospect in the Cubs organization. 6 home runs, 17 RBIs here in the Arizona Fall League, and that's why he was the easy choice for the Joe Black MVP award here in the Fall League.
Tremendous leverage, the long arms. He does have room to fill out that frame and get stronger, and we'll see when he plays third base. The ball really carries out of his hand. Tremendous arm strength.
One of many that has passed through the Arizona Fall League in its 26 years. We'll crown a 26th champion coming up shortly as we go to the 9th inning. An 8-2 lead for the Peoria Javelinas as Art Warren takes over on the mound. A.J. Simcox fouls that one off. 0-1. Paul Severino, Joe McGrain, Jim Callis of MLBpipeline.com up in the booth. Dan O'Dowd, a different perspective, closer to the field. Joining us as well, Art Warren's numbers at High A in 2017.
He's been one of the better relievers out here. I mean, the idea was you use him in a safe situation. They have a 6-run lead, so it's going to make it even tougher to come back. But he's been
pitching, and so far it's worked perfect to plan. His lineup has done its thing, scored a lot of runs.
Out toward right field, that is Acuna, who moved over from left a couple innings back, puts that one away for out number 1. Warren, a 23rd round pick in 2015 from Ashland University. Still hasn't given up a run here in the fall league. I think you'd take that in 11 2/3.
The last time we saw him, it was impressive. It looked like he really liked the action. He liked being in that closer situation. Showed no signs of shying away from it.
He'd be on the short list of players who've helped their prospect status the most with their time out here this year. He's really opened a lot of eyes.
Kyle Tucker, 2 away.
And given that he's a Mariner, I mean, Jerry DiPoto will probably trade him before this broadcast is over. So.
Yeah, it's a good chance.
Making the transition in 2017 from starter to reliever. 11-2 with a 3.17 ERA as a starter last season. This year, a 3.06 ERA, 74 strikeouts, and 64 2/3 as a reliever. And 2 quick outs here in the 9th inning as Kelvin Gutierrez, the last hope here for the Mesa Solar Sox, takes a called strike.
I just had this continuing bad dream that I'm going to wake up from, that everybody's a reliever and nobody starts anymore.
Yeah, the game has certainly changed. And certainly more so in the postseason where, you know, outside of a rain issue, you're not playing
Starters
more than
become
3
relievers.
days. Exactly. But, you know, you're not playing more than 3 days in a row. So the rest thing becomes an element. Gutierrez fouls that one away. And the Peoria Javelinas are 1 strike away from finishing up what has been a very impressive run for this team in the Arizona Fall League in 2017. A 1-2 from Warren. Ground ball towards short. That's Urias over to first. And the Peoria Javelinas have won the Arizona Fall League Championship in 2017. Now, if they could just loosen up and have some fun, then we'd really have a celebration on our hands. We've got baby powder and water bottles. And while these guys are really only together for 6 weeks of what's a long 7-month-plus season, I feel like I say it every year, and I'll say it again. No matter where their season began, different organizations, different levels, whatever the case is, these guys have busted their hump all summer long. The travel's not always glorious, but to finish your season with that celebration on the field, again, whether it's guys you played with for 6 weeks or 6 months, it's important.
It really is, and really for a lot of these guys, we talked about the talent that is out here each and every year. It's their first experience with having this type of exposure to winning, and it's a great start to knowing that it's such an incredibly talented and accelerated league, and you're pitting yourself up against some of the brightest young stars and the future stars of the major leagues, and to come out on top and win, it becomes a very memorable thing.
Yeah, I remember I would talk to Walker Lockett after he pitched the game that clinched the division for Peoria, and he said, if you're going to be out here, you might as well win a ring. And it's not just about tools and, you know, having the best fastball or the best swing. It's about being able to deal with the grind, and this has been the longest grind, I think, for almost every one of these players, the longest season they've ever endured. And if you're going to be out here, you always want to end your season celebrating.
Yeah, and talking to some of these players, some of them have played upwards of 200 games going back to spring training. That is a long long season. Dan O'Dowd has been with us throughout this game. Danny, what were some of your takeaways from this game?
Well, first I want to thank you guys for letting me crash your little party today.
Oh, you're welcome. You're paying for dinner, so it'll all even out.
Yeah, I'm extremely excited about the athletes I saw today on both sides. Peoria Club, offensively, they covered both sides and played well. It was fun to actually see a team put a ball in play consistently. We saw some great arms out of their bullpen. Guys, there's no doubt we're going to see a few of these guys playing important roles at the Major League level in 2018.
Yeah, it again comes as no surprise that the Peoria Javelinas put 8 runs on the board. They led the Arizona Fall League in average, in home runs, in runs scored. So even though they fell 2-0 after the top half of the first inning, they still had plenty left in the tank to come back, win this game, and win the Arizona Fall League Championship. So for Joe McGrain, Jim Callis, Dan O'Dowd, our entire crew here in Arizona, I'm Paul Severino saying goodbye from Scottsdale Stadium, and thanks for watching the 2017 AFL Championship game. Congratulations to the Peoria Javelinas on an AFL title.